All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Sedated Man, episode 86, Life Reimagined, an interview with David Mendonca. Now, okay, so Life Reimagined, everybody gets these, pictures of rainbows and flowers when you say Life Reimagined. It gives you this thought of, I have reimagined my life, I'm moving forward, I'm doing great things, and in a lot of cases that's the case. But sometimes your life is reimagined for you, and you thought that you were going a certain way, and things changed. Okay, and you had to imagine a picture that wasn't your original picture but became your picture quickly. That's why David is here. He's got an amazing story. He and his wife both, uh, and David, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'd like you to tell people what I've heard you tell others before.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. Um, I guess I'll just start off by kind of letting you know that I'm a fulfilled husband today, a father, and a successful in work, successful as an entrepreneur, and just successful in everyday life. You know what I mean? Just because of the changes that we went through, feeling leading up to these events. Happened about 2 years ago is where the incident happened, and I was working a lot out of town. I'm like I said, a journeyman lineman, so I work all over the place. Build power line all over the country.
Yeah.
And I was working in El Paso at the time, and I was a foreman out there. And I mean, it was a great gig. I mean, I loved it. I was making great money. You know what I mean? I was just having a blast out there. You know what I mean? Real good work. Well, leading up to that, my wife, she's an avid, runner. So she was getting ready for a marathon at the time. So she was running between 7 to 10 miles a day, and I remember clearly that fall, that went leading up into that winter, it was a very hot, it was unseasonably warm during that time. Mm-hmm. So she was out there running on the ditch bank, getting prepared, and she was in a tank top and stuff like that because, like I said, it was hot. And she came home, she started stretching, and she looked at her leg and she saw this little black bug. She thought it was a nick, like when she was shaving, So she kind of went to brush it off, and it fell off of her, and it had legs, and this sucker was the size of a little pepper granule,
Yep.
So it was like she didn't think anything of it. She's like, what the heck? Well, that was in November. We started going through the holidays and stuff like that. We're leading up into Christmas break, and up until then, she started calling me and she was complaining. She had a headache for about a month. She couldn't turn her head. You know what I mean? Her neck was real stiff, and she kept on saying that she might have overtrained. She's like, I think I overtrained. My hips really hurt me. My joints are hurting me. I feel like I'm an old woman, So she goes to the doctor, and the doctor checks her out, and they're like, oh, you just need to take it easy, rest, might be a flu or something. So it progressively gets worse, and she starts calling me more and more at work. And she knows not to call me when I'm working because at that time I was in the foreman position. So I'm looking at guys. I'm responsible of 4 other guys, 4 other sets of problems, which they have their own families and everything. And my job is to make sure they're safe and they're doing their job sound. You know what I mean? Everybody come home with their arms and legs,
Yep.
And so she knew that I didn't like to be called when I'm in the zone, I call it. So she was blowing me up. And finally I answered, and I was like, oh, what's going on? I got guys in the zone right now. And she's like, you need to come home. I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't feel good. I can't come out. I can't get out of the bed. I can't feed the kids right now. I can't even walk. And I'm like thinking to myself, what kind of crap is this? You're laying this out on me. You're telling me all this stuff. I'm in the middle of a big job. We were doing a big job at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you want from me? The house is paid for. I mean, we're paying off everything. You have everything you wanted. what more do you want from me? And I left it at that, and I hung up. Felt bad, of course, when I did that. So I called her up after work, and we started talking and stuff like that. And I didn't see a way to come home. Honestly, I was like, "There's no work over there where we're at. This is the reason why I'm out here. I mean, I got a company truck, company credit card, gas card. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm making great money."
Yeah.
I was like, what do you want me to do? I can't quit. I mean, we have great insurance. So we kind of left it at that. Came down to December 19th, and we went on vacation. I take 2 weeks off, for Christmas. And I came home finally, and everything was okay. I was, kind of wondering what was happening with her, because she was real weak. You know what I mean? She was starting to lose weight.
Yeah.
We didn't know what was happening. So Christmas Eve comes around, and we're at my sister's house, and we show up there, and she has this look on her face like she's in pain. And the whole time I'm kind of like, what's wrong with her? You know what I mean? Like, we're going to my sister's house, where, you're bringing us all down, kind of, you know what I mean? Because the way I was made, and God's corrected me on that big time, is I don't show a lot of empathy. I don't like weakness. You know what I mean? I grew up with the type of guy where if you have a broken leg and the bone ain't sticking out of the skin, stabbing you in the eye, you're okay. You know what I mean?
I do.
So when I see somebody, you know what I mean, like sick and stuff, it kind of bothered me at the time. This is pre God getting a hold of my heart and changing me. Okay, so
No,
just to let everybody know I'm not like that anymore.
Yep.
But so I was real, just like kind of disappointed and stuff. And my mom had to get a hold. My mom was there, and she specifically told me, she's like, something's wrong with your wife. I'm like, I know. I don't know what to do for her.
Yeah.
And my mother tells me, are you okay? She sits her down and everything, and she can't get up after she sat down. She couldn't feel her legs from the waist down at all. Feet, nothing. Her hands started getting real cold and numb. So we thought she might have been having like a stroke or something. So I took her to the emergency room right away. And the nurse was like, oh, we're putting you on an EKG. We're checking everything out. Everything seems fine. We don't know what to do. You guys want to go home and just spend time with your families. You know what I mean? If anything happens, come back tomorrow. And we're like, okay, you obviously don't want us here. So, you know what I mean? We'll do what you say, So we went home, went to bed, woke up the next morning. She's solid trooper, just out there, making Christmas dinner, and I'm opening gifts with the kids and everything, doing the whole family thing. And she gets real tired after that, and she's like, I'm gonna go lay down. And I was like, okay, I already took the kids a shower. I'm gonna watch Christmas Story on TV, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, she comes from the back room after that, and she's dressed, and I'm like, where are you going? And she's like, I gotta go to the emergency room, something's wrong. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? I got the kids in their pajamas, I was like, let me call the doctor. So I called the emergency room, and they told me, they're like, don't bring your kids here. There's a virus going on. We don't know what it is, and people are getting really, really sick. So if you can't bring your kids, don't bring them. You know what I mean?
You're right.
Well, I don't have any other real family close to me. So we decided to just have her go and call me if anything happened, right? So I stayed here with the kids. I put them to bed. And about 9:30 that night, they finally got her checked in. And the nurse calls me. And she's like, are you, she has you down as next of kin, or you're her husband, whatever. I'm like, yeah, well, what's going on? They're like, oh, your heart, your wife's heart just stopped. I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, it just stopped. It vagaled out. She's, you know what I mean? We brought her back up, we intubated her, and she's coming around. We're going to keep her overnight. We don't know what's going on, So during that time, my heart just dropped, I'm laying in bed by myself, kids are already in their bed. And my whole world, literally, when I say that, I mean, literally, thoughts are just spinning around my head in my bed. What am I going to do? What if she passes on? How am I going to take care of 3 kids? How am I going to do all this? Every single thing that you could possibly imagine was being thrown at me,
Oh,
So I
absolutely.
just start praying to God. And at that moment, I'm like, Lord, I don't know what's happening. We need answers. Please spare my wife. You know, and she makes it through the night. We go forward, and she comes home, and that was like on December 27th or so. She finally got out of the hospital, and between there and January 7th, she went to the emergency room like 6 different times. I mean, the ambulance would pick her up. And we live in the country, so for the ambulance to come out here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is a big deal. And they would come and pick her up, and they'd do the same thing. They'd check her out. They couldn't find anything. They finally told us that she needed to probably go to the Mayo Clinic, that she might have a full body arthritis or some kind of a MS type deal.
Yeah.
They didn't know. Anyhow, during that time, she's like thinking she's gonna die. I mean, there's a few times where I was in bed with her because she couldn't even get up, so I'd have to help her to the bathroom, help bathe her, help get her dressed, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And I was very fortunate that I was still off. I didn't have to go
Right.
back to work till January 7th. So the whole time it's in the back of my head. I'm like, what am I gonna do if we don't get this fixed? Who's gonna take care of my kids? I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I finally called up my boss at the time, and I told him, I was like, look, I don't know what's happening with my wife. Her heart stopped. I gave him the story, and he's like, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, this is construction, and pretty much if you can't come back to work, I can't save your spot, bro. So if you need to stay with your wife, stay with your wife, but you don't got a job anymore. You know what I mean? And I'm like, we're still in the union, right?
Yeah,
Thinking like
exactly.
that. I was like, okay, well, whatever. I was like, the bottom line is, Ronnie, I can't go back to work, right now. So we left that alone. I stayed home with my wife. I made that choice to stay there with her, to take care of her. And she keeps getting this thought in her head, Lyme, Lyme, just a little voice,
Yep.
And she told me a few times, and I'm like, what the heck's that? I didn't even know what it was, And she's like, I don't know. I just keep getting that I should get checked for this. I was like, well, let's see what other tests they have. So they did all kinds of crazy tests on her, EKGs, CAT scans, everything, right? Neurological scans.
Yep.
And finally, they're like, oh, we don't know. We don't have a clue for you. So she's like, oh, well, since you've tested me for everything, my wife tells them, she's like, can you at least test me for Lyme? Well, the doctor kind of snickered, he's like, Lyme, unless you're importing deer from the Northeast, then I don't think you would have that. But what's it going to hurt? We've tested for everything. So she gets tested. That following Monday, we get the call, 7:00. And they're like, you need to come in. Center of Disease Control wants to get, talk to you. You tested positive for Lyme. So from there, it was just a crazy battle of her taking all kinds of antibiotics. I mean, crazy. She was taking about 25 pills a day of antibiotics, which completely just eradicated any kind of good bacteria in her stomach to the point where she couldn't even eat. She lost like 35 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife was literally wasting away in front of me. And we didn't know what to do. So during that time, when she was really, really at her worst, she started telling me just, I don't have anything for you no more. Go ahead and leave me. I wouldn't blame you if you were to leave me, she would tell me.
That's tough stuff.
Yeah. And that really broke my heart, Hear everything I'd been chasing after, trying to provide a better life, try to make money, try to do all these things. And what was it for? Really? If I didn't have someone to share it with, if my wife, couldn't be there for me, what was it for? I lost almost every one of our anniversaries, I was gone, I've missed children's birthdays, everything, whether it be for a on call, to go on a storm or whatever, you know what I mean? I missed so much time I missed with them, you know what I mean? And I thought I could buy that time with money, with things, replacing everything I had lost from not being there.
Yep.
By buying things for them. And that was absurd to think that, you know what I mean? I had become so emotionally detached that I didn't even understand the amount of damage I had created in my absence at the house. You know what I mean? With my children,
I do.
with my wife, And when I was forced to be home, I say forced because I literally couldn't go to work. I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't provide nothing. That whole entire time, I don't even know how God just met our needs. You know what I mean? I was getting a check from here. Somebody owed me something. You know what I mean? Stuff was coming in. You know what I mean? I sold some stuff, and I mean, all our needs were met during that time. You know what I mean? I went from a pretty good income to not having it, not being able to work at all, to now all of a sudden God's providing for us. You know what I mean? And I really had to lean on Him and just really thank Him for everything He was doing, because I literally couldn't do. My whole job at that point in time was not to be the provider, but to be the helper, the leader, of my home. You know what I mean? To be there with my wife, as a good spouse, to help bathe her, to help her with everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a humbling event. I mean, so humble. You know what I mean? Because of that. Mm-hmm. During that time, like I said, I started to really see the damage I had caused at my house. My kids were estranged from me. They were used to me coming home every, for 2 days at a time. You know what I mean? So they weren't used to the whole 7-day deal, the 7-day dad. They're used to the 2-day dad. So instead of being celebrated, I started, you know what I mean, for me being home, like, hey, daddy, they're happy I'm home. I was just being tolerated. They're like, oh, when is this guy going to go? When is he going to leave? And I started seeing that, and I was like going through all these emotions. My wife's, not in the best place, you know what I mean? And then my children are kind of estranged from me, and they don't even understand, why daddy does things and stuff like that, and I just saw that no amount of love, no amount of money could replace my presence. You know what I mean? That my house was not a home without the Father being there. That's what I had learned during that time.
Yeah.
God started really changing my heart. He started showing me who I was, and once I started figuring out who I belonged to, I found out who I was, and that was probably the biggest major turnaround through this whole story that I have, is just realizing my role at the house, how important it was, how important my presence was. You know what I mean? I've heard John Maxwell say that a good leader is a good leader. How does he put it? He puts it that a good leader has influence, right?
Yep.
Well, in order to have influence, you have to have time. You know what I mean? If you have less time, you have less influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to be around.
So, yeah, exactly. You got to be around for everything, And now that I've been home, through COVID and stuff like that, I chose to be home because, as when they have something that happens like that to them, they have a weakened immune system and stuff like that. So,
yep.
I chose to be home to help my kids out, help my wife out, you know what I mean? And just make sure she's okay, you know what I mean, during this time, and just to really kind of seek out what God has for me, you know what I mean, in my life. I'd always been the journeyman lineman, you know what I mean? I go and do this, I do this. But I always knew that there was a higher calling for me. I didn't know what it was. I had ran for it for 7 years. God had been dealing with me, you know what I mean? During that whole time I was on the road, God had been working by getting me alone, being, when I was by myself with my family, without my family and stuff like that. He was always knocking out that door, you know what I mean? Trying to get me to really seek Him out, And I didn't want to, you know what I mean? I didn't want to step into this role of speaking or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like, what do I know? You know what I mean? Just tell me where you want a power line put and I'll build it for you. You know what I mean? That type of attitude,
Yeah.
you know? So this was all very new to me when God started changing my heart, started showing me, you know, this is where I want you to go. You know, more people want to listen to this stuff. You know what I mean? More fathers out there. You know, the absentee father, the checked out dad. You know what I mean? They need to hear this story. You know, and
Yeah. You know, I think there's a lot of dads that they're present, but they're not present.
yep,
You know, so but you're absolutely right. I mean, the churches are full of guys who are just, you know, filling warming chairs and don't realize what they're missing out on with their families. And you found out the hard way that the life you imagined was not the one in line for you, and the life that's been imagined for you now. I've heard you say on other podcasts that you feel that you and your wife are best friends now, that you're probably closer than you've ever been.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it came that point right there came from me understanding my role to be a servant leader. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, I served my wife. You know what I mean? I served her during that whole entire time like I had never served her before. And now I know that's my calling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be here for my family, to not only just to provide, because providing is honorable, you know what I mean? I'm still a hard worker, I'm still a journeyman lineman and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but to start looking towards and changing my vision, I guess, is what I
Mm-hmm.
did. God completely changed my path from not really having a clear, direct vision. You know what I mean? Just living day to day. You know, oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the next big job or the next big job or whatever. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
buying boats and everything else. You know, and from that, I changed it to what was important. You know, the Bible talks about how, you know, where your heart is, your treasure is also.
Mm-hmm.
And mine definitely wasn't with my family. You know what I mean? It wasn't. You know, I thought I was. You know what I mean? I really did. I thought by buying them, like I talked about earlier, buying them stuff was actually buying my way out. You know, they started to become like a possession. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all this stuff that I accumulated had become energy leaks.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything that I accumulated started taking more and more of my time. I thought I was buying this, buying that, buying this for the family, but in return, all that stuff has something that needs to be done to it, right? Maintenance.
Yeah.
And my family took a back seat to that because when I came home, what's the first thing I wanted to do? Go to my hobbies or go check out what I needed to do in the yard or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Work on your stuff.
Yeah, work on my stuff. You know, and I justified that by saying I needed to unwind and I needed to have my time. But it's like, man, you had your time when you're away from your family, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how twisted my mentality was. I was already gone for the whole week or a month or whatever. I had all the time alone, and now I want to have my alone time again when I'm at the house when they need me, when they're you know pulling on my pants for attention.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how twisted I had become, you know, in my thought process. You know what I mean?
Well, you've been able to redefine providing too, because I mean, when you were there taking care of your wife, you may not have been bringing money in, but you were providing. Okay.
Yeah.
Providing is so much more than just a dollar. So, excuse me. So, a couple things before you go any further. Now, uh, and I'm not going to lie, I had an intro for David and I forgot to read it, but we don't have, we're not perfect here on the Sedated Man. We just want to get info out. Okay. So, but you've currently been a lineman 14 years,
Yes.
right? Okay. Union lineman. Uh, been married 15 years. You got 3 daughters.
Or oh, one daughter.
One daughter, sorry. One
Two
daughter, two
sons.
sons. Yeah, I see that now. Sorry, my mistake. So one daughter, two sons. And so, you know, a lot of guys, I don't think until they get into a situation like yours realize how much work those kids are, how much work it is to get them to and fro. And and moved around and watched and fed and clothed and bathed. And because I had 5 boys,
Hmm.
and like I told you before, we're a blended family. I had 5 boys, and feeding 5 boys on one income is tough stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I understand what you mean, because we did the math, and I think out of all of my military time, I spent 3 years away from my family, 3 solid
Hmm.
years between 2 deployments and some other things. So, and just to remind everybody, David's a veteran. He's a Navy veteran. He understands the meaning of work. All right. He understands what it means to commit to a job and get it done, which is part, I think, of where your focus on the job came from. But what I want to bring out in that is there was nothing wrong with you taking great pride in your job. God made mankind, men specifically, to divide and conquer. All right. That's part of why our women are attracted to us. We have a divide and conquer mentality. All right. The problem comes when culture creeps into our divide and conquer conquest. All right. And suddenly that divide and conquer takes on a new form. And unfortunately, I think you had to find that out, the hard way. But
Yeah.
that hard way has reaped great benefits and rewards within the relationship with your wife and with your kids. Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now David wants to, and I'm going to read his this is basically your mission statement, I think, isn't it? Your passion
Yes.
is to bring encouragement to married men that are stuck in a rut, who've lost the vision for their lives and for the very lives of their families. And you want to help men to realign their lives under the headship of Christ and realize it's okay to be a tough man and a Christian. Now, one of the guys I love in scripture is David,
Yes.
because David was a real man. He was a man after God's own heart, even with all of his major screw ups. All right. So, I mean, the things that you've gone through and the things that you've done have shown that type of character and that type of charisma, I think, David. So, I mean, let's put a little bit of time frame to this too. How long ago was it that that all of this started happening with your wife? Was it one Christmas ago, 2 Christmases ago?
It was 2 Christmases ago.
Uh, and was it H1N1 that was the big thing then?
I think it was the H1N1. I think
Okay,
that's what it was. I thought it was COVID personally because I got sicker than hell. You know what I mean? But, I mean, I wound up in the hospital too, with pneumonia. I didn't even know,
yeah,
and but it was H1N1, I believe, is the one that was going
yeah,
around, and people were just dropping off like flies. You know what I mean? Just left and right.
yeah. So, and I just wanted to get that so we have a little time frame there for guys listening. So, all right. So you've got this awesome story, but there's something I want to ask you now that you've lived through this,
Hmm.
is what's okay. Your story is very similar to some guys I've known in the oil fields too,
Yeah.
because I live in Montana and these guys were going to North Dakota, they were going to Wyoming, and one friend of mine in particular, he contracted cancer twice, and he was working uh, in the fields, and he had to come home. The second time, he wasn't able to go back to work. All right.
Yeah.
He had a very similar story, only he was the sick one. And I would like to find out, what is your opinion on, or how do you feel about men who work a job that takes them away for long periods of time now? Has has your opinion changed on that? Do you think guys should consider a time limit, or do you think it just depends on the relationship? I mean, you're qualified to say what's your opinion on that?
My opinion on it is that's if you're gonna live a life on the road like that, that's for the man who's single. I mean, honestly, my opinion, because
Yeah, no.
and this is me saying this. I mean, I don't know how many linemen's wives, you know what I mean, how many divorces being on the road has caused. I
Mhm.
mean, from men having their wives cheat on them while they're at work to, you know what I mean. I've lost two friends, you know what I mean, where that happened and they couldn't deal with it and they committed suicide and they're linemen, you know what I
Yeah.
mean. And just it takes two, you know what I mean. Um, when your absence is away, you know what I mean, they still have needs as well,
Yes.
you know. And just like you do too, when you're on the road, you still have needs, you know what I mean? And those needs are supposed to be meant by a life of togetherness, you know what I mean? What does God say, to become one flesh? So you're supposed to be living together in unison with your spouse, her not being under you or above you, but right next to you, living life together.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I don't believe that married men should go on the road. And if they have to provide, they should have a limit on how much time is being spent on the road. I mean, right now there's so much technology to where you can get on and see your family and stuff like that. But how many men are really doing that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can still not replace that time being lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can't replace it, at all. The little things too. That's where I started seeing is, my baby's first steps or whatever. That's something I can't get back. My baby son, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't here. I was in Oklahoma on an ice storm when he had just been born.
Yep.
And just little things like that. I think that's to answer your question was, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't think men who are married should be on the road for any amount of time, for a long period of time, I should say,
Yeah.
you know?
See, so this is what I wanted to get to on this point. All right. And this is like one of those, boy, you talk to most dudes about this. I don't know about your lineman buddies, but I've talked to linemen. I have several friends that are linemen.
Uh-huh.
I've talked to military guys because obviously I was 24 years National Guard and I had 2 deployments. I've talked to oil field guys. All right. When you suggest that they should be home, and that was always my suggestion to them, that them leaving for these long periods of time was a bad plan,
Uh-huh.
they would get irate and angry with me.
Absolutely.
And it was
I've had,
always
yep.
the same thing. Mike, I can't make that here. Okay, that's great. You can't make that here. What can you do here? Well, I can't make that. This isn't about what you can make. It's about what you can make happen. And so this is part of this, the whole idea of the sedated man. Guys need to, that divide and conquer can be used positively or negatively. And these guys, and I know why the oil fields and the linemen, I know why they flash those dollars out there. And I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
But what did it, you were able to renew your family and bring it back together, and your wife is doing better, correct? Considerably.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but how many guys have we both known that have not? This is something that needs to be addressed in the churches. Quit leaving your families to take care of your families because you're not.
Exactly.
Paying a bill is not worth it. It used to really irritate me. This is one of my rants. I apologize. It used to really irritate me when people would talk about tithe. Okay. Now, one buddy I had said, I attend a Church of Christ, and he would always joke about how a person gets baptized and then their wallet gets baptized about a year later. So, and you get it.
Yeah.
So, but the whole idea is people are like, just tithe. God will cover you. God will cover you.
Yes.
And it's like, whoa. God doesn't necessarily work that way. Sometimes God wants to see your resolve. He wants to see if it's going to be so important that you pay him before you pay this, or that you pay him before you pay this. One of the best sayings I ever heard was tithe your way out of debt. And I can tell you firsthand that it absolutely works.
Yep.
So this idea that's being sold to these religious guys, to these guys sitting in church, it's appealing because it gives them the impression that they can accomplish more than they're accomplishing at home. When in truth, the whole idea is, this is one of the Satan master plans, is to pull men out of the homes.
Yes.
Okay. You and I had talked about maybe going over pornography a little bit, and I want to actually touch on that now, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I printed off some statistics. One of them is pornography use increases the marital infidelity rate by more than 300%. Now, I don't know about you, but in the military on deployment, pornography was rampant. Absolutely rampant. It was something I didn't have a problem with on deployments. But the divorce rate was no joke, 75 to 80% when we returned, both times.
Wow.
So I'm sure Did you see that as a problem when you were a lineman being gone for long periods of time?
Um, yeah, mostly when I worked at the utility.
Uh-huh.
Um, a lot of times there would be guys who would be like, pull over here, get over here, we got to go over here, and we drive the trouble truck or whatever. And next thing you know, I'm thinking he's trying to get coordinates on the computer, and no, it's just because there was a good Wi-Fi spot for him to pull up his porn. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to see that shit. You know what I mean? Excuse
Yeah.
my language. Just like, I don't want to
Yeah.
see that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I'm gonna be inside, so I'd go inside the store and leave them. You know what I mean? To whatever their device, whatever they liked, you know what I mean? That was none of my business. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it ran. I know I dealt with it.
Yeah.
And it when I would go through that problem, I think it's every man's battle. To be quite honest, you know what I mean? It's for me, it was a coping mechanism.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If I had anxieties from whatever, during the day or whatever, that's how I would cope with my problems. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's how I used it. And it would just leave you feeling awful. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Afterwards, that emptiness that you feel, you know what I mean? That, you had your high and then all of a sudden you're done. And then you just felt like a POS, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Afterward, you're just like,
Yeah.
damn.
Absolutely.
And then you couldn't even look at your wife when you would come home. I couldn't even look at my wife the same way because I had just expended everything I needed, you know what I mean, on something else, which was not even a relationship or nothing like that. It was just an
Not
empty
even
feeling.
realistic.
Yeah, unrealistic. And then I'd come home and then I didn't have anything really for my wife, you know what I mean? And she'd be like, and then that leads into her way of thinking, like I think most women do, where, well, he's not attracted to me, or what's he doing? Is he getting some on the road, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just starts a big old process, you know what I mean? And I liked what you said about divide and conquer. Um, I believe that's one of Satan's number one ways to destroy the family as well. We
Yes.
know divide and conquer in the military. That's how military units would be set up to separate, you know what I mean, and take over a country or whatever, right?
Yep.
Satan does the same tactic. He will divide the husband, whether it be emotionally or spiritually, you know what I mean, or even physically, like in my case, he'll divide him from his spouse,
Yep.
and then he'll work on the husband over here, and then he'll work on the wife over here, and in turn, he's getting them to bicker and drive that wedge to separate them. But what he's really after is your legacy. He's after your children. If he can
Yes.
get you guys to destroy your marriage to the point where it gets so ugly to where your children grow up in a home of divorce, you know what I mean? He's won. He just destroyed the next generation.
Yep.
And that's what's going rampant today. I mean, it's crazy, the divorce rate. I had some statistics here, and I don't know where they went, but I mean, I was just doing like a thing on divorce rate, and it's unbelievable how much it's going. It's like 1 in 3, I think.
Yeah.
There's a divorce. Here it is. I found it.
Okay.
There is one divorce every 36 seconds. Okay,
Yep.
that's 2,400 per day, 16,800 per week. The average length of a marriage is 8 years. That's crazy,
Yeah.
And it also goes on to say that a person spends 2 years thinking about divorce before actually taking action.
Yeah.
So there's time. That means that there's still hope. You know what I mean? You got 2 years of thinking about it. If you change your thinking, you change the way you're processing your marriage, how you're thinking towards your wife and stuff like that. There's still hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
A
it
couple
all
of
starts with vision. So.
It does. Now, a couple of things you mentioned there. I just want to mention a couple of stats I've got on the porn here. 11 is the average age of a child that's first exposed to porn, and 94% of children will see porn by the age of 14.
Wow.
56% of American divorces involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. And then for all the ones who are avid churchgoers, 68% of church-going men and over 50% of pastors view porn on a regular basis. Of young Christian adults 18 to 24 years old, 76% actively search for porn. So, okay. So what's my point in bringing all that up? You've got a very amazing story. All right. You've got a wife who really almost died. And who knows what would have happened if you guys hadn't caught it when you caught it.
Yes.
All right. If you hadn't taken it serious, finally, who knows what would have happened? I mean, part of being men is we got to own our own stuff.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if you hadn't finally owned it, that it was time for me to, I'm sure it was hard to say, no, I'm not coming back to work.
Oh yeah.
Especially because that was part of who you were. That was part of your character, part of your, you know, part of your divide and conquer mentality, part of just who you were to everybody else was being a lineman. And you felt in a certain sense, I'm sure, that by not returning to work, you were failing at that. And ultimately you felt failure in all kinds of other areas, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That always crosses your mind.
Yeah. So you have a different perspective, like many of the other men I've talked to who are now home. You have a different perspective in the fact that you recognized when you finally got home that this is where I should be. And you said it yourself, that what you were doing was more of a single man's life than a married man's life.
Yes.
Now, have your kids starved?
No.
No. You still got you're still in the same house.
Yes.
Still got cars that go.
Yep.
Okay. The point being is, like I said, it's not about how much you make, it's what you can make happen. You and your family made it happen when you picked the priority, when you said, we are going to be active, we are going to move forward, I am going to lead, I'm not just going to drag. Because a lot of guys, they throw paychecks at stuff and really they just kind of drag their families along. And I'm not saying that's what you were doing. I wasn't there to see exactly, but that's what a lot of guys do. But you chose to lead. You chose to step out of the other mentality into the one, and now you feel inspired to help men move past it, because now when you go to church, I'm sure you look through very different eyes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's kind of weird because now
Yep.
I'm not looking at men like judging them at all.
No.
But I see where they were at because I was there.
Yep.
And it's almost like I guess the word would be not conviction, but it would be discernment. I'd get discernment over guys who are going through the same thing, and I feel for them. I have empathy towards them because I've been in their shoes, and it breaks my heart, you know, especially when one day you see them with their spouse, and then you talk to them, 6 months down the road, and they're like, oh no, we got divorced, bro. I don't know how many guys I know that tell me the same story. How's your wife doing? How's your kids? Oh man, we got divorced. You know what I mean? And I was there praying with them during that time while they're going through their stuff while they were on the road.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy how things, but it boils down to what you said. We have a choice. As men, I made the choice, and other men need to make that choice. Yes. What are you going to choose? Are you going to choose a career, success, or are you going to choose your family and significance? And that's what I have to do. I have to find my significance. You know what I mean?
That's an excellent way to put it.
Absolutely. When I looked up the meaning of significance, right?
Yep.
It's important and deserving of attention. Okay. Now I have to be important in my children's life and my wife's life in order to be worthy of their attention. You know what I mean? I have to be that leader so they can look up to me. I have to be that man of influence. I have to live with what I said. You know what I mean? If I said I'm going to do this and I'm going to stay home, I'm going to help you, I'm going to do this, you know what I mean? I have to live that. I have to become what I wanted to see. And at first I needed to have that vision of who I needed to change into.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It just made everything different. You know what I mean? I needed to lead my family. I needed to take that helm to lovingly lead my home, to walk in honor with integrity and just fully embrace the responsibility that I had that God had given me as a shepherd over my own home, And that's what I'm doing today. And glory to God, it's better. Like you said, we never lacked. You know what I mean? During this
Yep.
whole entire time, we've never lacked. All my bills are paid. Everything's met. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And but it was a choice.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying for people out there, and other guys out there, when they tell you or they told me, that I'm not making that money. I'm not making that money. You know what I mean? Well, what are you going to give up? Are you going to give up your family, or are you going to give up
Uh,
the Harley,
yeah,
the boat?
exactly.
What's important to you? You need to make a decision. What is important? Is your family taking a back seat? You know what I mean? Is that okay with you?
Got to get
That's the
uncomfortable.
question.
I think more men need to get uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I agree with you
Yeah,
110%,
because comfort slays the family, really.
Absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
It does,
I
It
mean,
almost did mine.
yeah. I've heard it said many times that, if all there was in life was to grow up, procreate, and feed your family, well, the animal kingdom does that. But
Yes.
we are not animals.
Nope.
We are so much more. So don't let your 9 to 5 define you. Don't let your paycheck define you. That's the whole point of this,
Mhm.
you know? And I love what you're doing and where you're going with it. And you and your wife are a testament. I mean, you can look at these guys who are taking these long jobs and say that I can tell you that is not worth it. Not worth it. You can look at these guys and know their bad habits, like like the porn, like the drinking. I always called them twofers in the military, where you get two men for the price of one. They were one way in front of mama and another way when they were in front of the dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what is the one thing that you think men need to change today?
I think that they just need a step. First off, they need to define what is important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Once they find that definition of their family or whatever they want to put first in their life, you know what I mean? Once they do that, I think everything else will follow. You'll start making the proper steps in order to lead your family. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's got to start. A man has to start not looking at his family as a possession, like I
Yeah.
did.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start having that relationship with them, start building that relationship again, getting that relationship back, start getting your relationship right with the Lord. If you
Yep.
believe in God or whatever, you know what I mean? Whoever you want to pray to, for me, it was Jesus Christ, you know, um, that's what really led me and guided me through all my hard times, you know what I mean? And just
Yep.
making those steps of seeing how I wanted my family, owning up to what I was doing and seeing the damage that I was causing, and being able to be a man and be like, man, I'm not doing what I'm called to do. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Absolutely.
Those are some of the things I would leave to men out there nowadays. Is just take a hold of your responsibility. You have a family, be a man, lead your family, have responsibility. Just like at the job, at the workplace, you're responsible for whatever.
Yep.
Be a man, own up to it. You have a family, be responsible for them, lead them. You know, and that's what I'd leave it as.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, you can, as a man, decide to reimagine your life now, or you can leave it be and it will be reimagined for you at some point. And
Yep.
that's not always the proper way. David, I appreciate you being here. Where can people find you, or can they find you?
Yeah, they could find me at my email. Probably the best way to get a hold of me. It's linehand611 at gmail.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Instagram under First Tim 113.
Okay. And I'll put links to those in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. David, thank you very, very much. You can find all the show notes on patreon.com. Look under the Sedated Man. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and just about any other platform. You can find us on Parler and Canund. And a few of you are like, what the heck are those? but they're there.
They're there.
So everybody go out and conquer. And thanks, and Baker out.